feel free to join us at the altar, stand, sit, however you're comfortable. I count on one thing, the same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out, working all things out. Oh yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Oh yes, I will pour joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will. Thank you, Jesus. I count on one thing, the same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God that's never late, working all things. He's working all things out. Sing yes, I will. Yes, I will. Lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will. Bless your name. Oh yes, I will. Sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will. Oh yes, I will. Lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will. Bless your name. Oh yes, I will. Sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will. I choose to praise, to glorify the name of our names. Nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, to glorify the name of our names. Nothing can stand against. Oh yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Oh yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will. I choose to praise, to glorify the name of our names. Nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, to glorify the name of our names. Nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, to glorify the name of our names. That nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, to glorify the name of our names. Nothing can stand against. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Oh yes, I will sing for joy when my
Praise the Lord, church. Wow, what an awesome crowd tonight for a Wednesday night. It's just so awesome to see so many of your faces, and we are super excited to be kicking off our, 3-part series on porn-proofing your home. It looks like some of you got a little bit uncomfortable when I said that word. So look at your neighbor and say, we need to porn-proof our homes.
So let's just establish who this Bible study series is for. If you have a cell phone, a smartphone, raise your hand. If you have access to a tablet or a computer of any kind, raise your hand. If you have a child who has a smartphone or access to a tablet, raise your hand. If you have a child who has a friend who has a smartphone or a tablet or a computer, raise your hand. Did I miss anybody? Even our 3-year-old knows how to work a phone and a tablet. And sometimes he can get clicking around and get clicking on things that he shouldn't be. Maybe Amazon, buy something he shouldn't. See some things that maybe he shouldn't see.
Let's just read a quick statistic on porn exposure. These statistics are absolutely mind-blowing, and we could go all night with these statistics, but one that's a national survey published in the Journal of Health and Communications approximates 85% of 14 to 18-year-old males and 57% of 14 to 18-year-old females have viewed pornography. This is one of the more conservative statistics we found, and a study also suggested that just because you're a Christian or your children go to church, it doesn't really necessarily protect your child from getting exposed to pornography. So the series that we're starting tonight, and Sister Rodenbush is going to come in just a minute, we're going to lay out some of the foundations of what the porn industry is trying to do and how they're trying to market to you and your family and to your children. And then next week we're going to look at ways that we can kind of protect our homes and start to put the padlock on those wires that are exposing us to so many thousands of websites out there that are trying to take advantage. And so, in no further delay, Sister Jay Rodenbush, as many of you know, if you've gone to Indiana Bible College, I know a lot of us have, their family has had such an impact on my life, and I'm sure on yours as well. But she holds a bachelor's degree in music and corporate communications from the University of Indianapolis. She has a master's in higher education. She has a master's in mental health and counseling from Indiana University. And she has been just kind of throughout the industry. She's been in corporate communications and for 16 years at IBC as the Dean of Administration and the Director of Women's Ministry. And in her newest role, she's serving as the Director of Alumni Engagement for the Recovery Centers of America, which serves Illinois and Indiana and Maryland and Massachusetts. And you kind of get the idea, right? There's just a ton of stuff that she's doing. So she's working with thousands of people every year and with over 1,000 people in treatment at any given time. So let's put our hands together and welcome Sister Jay Rodenbush.
Thank you all so much. I think I have a school addiction. Thank you. I appreciate that. You guys can be seated. Thank you again. I want to say I hate that the Arrowwoods are not here tonight, but I'm so thankful that they got to get away or that they're doing the work of God elsewhere. I am very grateful for Elder Brother Arrowwood, Sister Nancy Arrowwood, and the other Pastor Arrowwood and Misty Arrowwood. Their support and comfort through the loss of our mothers, through ministerial transition, they've been pastors to us, and they have such a pastor's heart and such servants' hearts, and they're loyal and they show love. And I am just so grateful for that. And not only did they show love to us, but you all showed love to us. So thank you for letting us hug that back row for a little while here and there. And I don't know how I was really comfortable back there, so I don't know what I'm doing up here tonight, but you'll have to forgive me. I'm a little rusty. We've been enjoying just being a part of the congregation. So let me thank my husband for driving me here tonight. I give honor to him and my daughter. Mickey. And thanks for your kindness to my kids. Would you be mad if the Airwoods aren't here to tell me I can't. That was dangerous of them to leave. But I would feel so much more comfortable if I was on the floor. Would that be all right? And I could see you and we could just have a talk. How's that? Would that be okay? Okay. Don't tell. If I'm not supposed to do it, don't tell. All right. That's what happens when you leave somebody with a topic like this, right? And then get up and just leave them. I was like, couldn't you give me a softball topic or something easy for the first time to get to speak to you all? But no, I do really feel that this is an important topic. I'm so thankful that your pastors have prioritized this right at the beginning of a year when we're all thinking about New Year's resolutions and things and disciplines and habits that we want to put in our lives. I just think it's perfect timing, and to have the young people in here to allow you to start thinking about disciplines and things that you want to put in your own life is so important. So let me just start off. About a year and a half ago, I wound up in jail, Bartholomew County Jail. And I walked in, and I was a little discombobulated. I was there to start an addiction treatment program with 17 male inmates. And I walked in, and that door clinks behind you. Everything is heavy. Everything is cold. Everything is metal. Everything has a certain smell. And I walked in, the door clinked behind me. There's no guard. There's me and 17 male inmates. And they said, go do counseling. Figure out what to do. So there I am. And I walk in, and one of the ladies had told me that there was a man they called Jesus Locks. And he was about 6'4", and he had long Jesus locks. And that was about the only thing. I've seen a lot of pictures of Jesus, but this did not look like Jesus. He had more tattoos than he had skin. I mean, they were everywhere, hands, face. And I thought, okay, you're either going to be scared forever or you're going to conquer this right now, right? And so I walked in and I said, hi, I'm Jay. And he said, oh, hi. He said, would you let me show you my Bible? And I said, yes, I would love that. And we sat down, and he opened his Bible, and he showed me pictures of his kids. And we talked about how addiction had gotten him behind jail again and again and again. And you can say, well, pornography is not drugs. No. But what I've learned, and I've been working solely in addiction, in the field of addiction over the last year and a half, working in the jail, now working for Recovery Centers of America, that there is a strong correlation between what drugs do to our system and what also pornography does to our system. So we can't say that this is just addiction or this is just drugs. We have to say that there is an addictive process that happens in our brains. And it may be drugs, but it might be pornography. It might be food. It could be gambling. It could be shopping. I've worked with a lot of people who do have shopping addictions. My husband thinks I have a shopping addiction. We're working through it. But these processes happen in the brain, and they create pathways. They create neural pathways and that form our habits and form our behaviors. So we can do we have slides? Oh, I thought they'd be back there too. So I'll have to peek too. So we're going to think of this. It's not just a matter of, and if I've learned anything about working with people in addiction, is you can't just say, well, that's a bad thing you did. You need to change that. It doesn't work that way, because they've actually changed neural pathways in the brain. So when we deal with the heart as Christians, and I think oftentimes addiction begins in the heart, but it also affects the brain. So it's not enough to just always, and I know God can do an instant work and he can deliver and he can save. I believe that. But oftentimes it's not just a matter of that one time I've been saved from addiction. It's a process of having to relearn and retrain not only our heart and the issues that we deal with Christ, but the issues that we have done and the processes that have taken place in the brain. So I'm nerdy, as you've already heard, and I like stuff about the brain. So let's go to the next slide, and we'll see what's on there. We live in a time of overwhelming abundance. When's the last time, and I know some people there is still food insecurity, and there's times when people can't get a good meal. I understand that. But for the majority of the people sitting in this room, we live in abundance. We can go to the grocery store. We can get what we want. We can watch what we want. Now, not even on TV, but in our hands. It's just stuff. It's consumerism. It's complete abundance. We live in abundance, but we also live with overwhelming dysfunction. It's like you sit a baby in a room full of toys and you say, play. And psychologists have shown that they really don't know how to do that. It's not just the items, the abundance that they need. They have to be taught how to play. And mothers have this instinct. We get down on the floor. Can I borrow your baby? That'd be great. We get down on the floor with these little things. Oh, look at this. Look at that. Oh my goodness, you gonna talk? You gonna sing? Yeah. And we do stuff just like that. Did you see how I didn't even think about it, but my voice changed. And I start, if she was starting to be fussy, I might rock her. I might tap her. I'd pat her. And that creates a neural pathway that says, when I'm uncomfortable, somebody will touch me, somebody will pat me, somebody will engage with me and make me feel better, right? That happens. Or we get down on the floor and we get eye to eye and we show you a few toys and we play with them. And so we train our kids that this toy is fun. If we put a kid in a room full of toys, what do they usually go to? The boxes that they came in, right? You spend, an ungodly amount of money at Christmas, and then 2 hours later, the kid's in the cardboard box, right? They don't naturally just gravitate toward things. We teach them through our parenting, through different ways to interact. But what we've done as society, can you do babies? I don't know, can you take her back? We haven't had a baby in the family in a while. We're out of practice. So what we do now with babies, instead of when they're crying, instead of when children need connection, what's the most common thing we do? We hand them an object, an iPad. And through those images, they develop that connection. When I'm sad, when I'm crying, when I'm lonely, what do I get? I get an iPad. I get a device. I get a flat screen with pictures. And so that starts creating the neural pathways that says my comfort mechanism, the way I receive comfort, the way I soothe myself is through this device that everyone has in their back pocket, the phone. And as we get older, that's our main source of connection. And we see images and we keep scrolling. And that's why a lot of teenagers, sometimes you find yourself and you're like, man, I was just gonna check my Instagram. And now I'm 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, 30 minutes later, and now I'm looking up platypus feet and I don't even know why. It's because you're receiving some sort of reward center that told your brain this is a way to turn off and relax. And it starts very young and keeps going. I like to play Candy Crush at night, right? Because it turns off my brain. I have trained my brain at night, if I play Candy Crush, I get little coins and it doesn't cost me anything, but it is an soothing device. And so pornography works in very similar ways. Let's go to the next one. And when by the overwhelming dysfunction, just meant we live in this society, we've given all this stuff, but we've had no parameters, we've had no guidelines. Very few families are doing what you all are doing tonight by sitting in a room and deciding we need to talk about these things. And that has led to dysfunction. When I was at the jail, of my 17 male inmates, only 2 of them started using drugs as an adult. The rest of them had started using drugs, alcohol, and yes, all of them were addicted to pornography as well, as children. This is a result of severe dysfunctional families, dysfunctional mental health, dysfunction in our lives. So we'll go to the next one. So this is what healthy volunteers look like. Oh, go back. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just there. I promise I'll be done. Pornography, like drugs, floods the brain with dopamine. Dopamine is what makes you happy. It is the feel-good chemical. But the problem with drugs and the problem with pornography is it gives us so much dopamine at one time that our brain doesn't know what to do with it. And then when we go back and try to have a normal interaction, we're not as fulfilled. We go, oh, that wasn't very, yeah, I got around my family and friends. That should make me happy. So you get this, again, dysfunction because our brains are used to that huge hit of dopamine that we know things like drugs, alcohol, and chemicals and pornography do to us. Are you guys completely bored out of your gourd? I'm going to try to get more into this. So healthy volunteers, this is the pleasure center of the brain. It lights up a little bit when they view porn. But when someone with a pornography problem views porn, their pleasure center lights up a whole lot. So we've developed these neural pathways, and it connects triggers. So maybe when you see a phone, then you might want to, have you ever just tried as teenagers to set your phone somewhere and not think about it? How long can you go? It's not long, is it? If you forget to check Instagram or your texts and it's dinner time, does it go in the back of your mind? And you start thinking, I probably should check to see if anybody messaged me, or did I get a text? Does anybody think about stuff like that when you're away from your phone? It can happen relatively quickly. That's because, again, there's a neural pathway that has said that I feel better. It's just like, that they designed, this is my nerdiness coming out again. Do you know that they designed email and Facebook and the scrolling so that when you click down on it and you get a new message that pops up or you get a new post to feel new and fresh all the time, it's a reward. That's exactly right. And you know what other machine functions just like that? A slot machine. So when you go to Vegas and it goes ping, 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 and there's a reward and it gets all those, I don't know, it would be fun, maybe not fun. That would be don't, Brother Airwood, I hope you're not listening right now. I didn't mean to say that. So anyway, but it's that same pleasure center. These were smart people that knew how brains worked. And that's why I think you need to know how your brain works so that you can go, is this something I want to do? Do I want to be married to my cell phone all the time? Or do I want to have that connection where I feel very uncomfortable, or I start getting anxious or nervous if I haven't checked my phone? And that can be a feeling based on the neural pathway. All right, so over time, we know that pornography can actually shrink the brain's gray matter. It shrinks your brain. There are studies that show that pornography actually shrinks the brain, the prefrontal cortex, and that's the part of the brain that affects decision-making, our ability to have an attention span. Our attention spans just as a country and as a world are getting shorter and shorter and shorter. We can't sit still. It affects attention and impulse control. Okay, so we'll go to the next one. So what does pornography's effect do on us? We will have issues with concentration. Maybe we will not be able to read the slides anymore. No. Low motivation, depression, social anxiety, negative self-perception, and sexual dysfunction. These are all studies, and I didn't look at just Christian studies that are trying to sell you something to block pornography. These are actual studies that come from well-known universities, peer-reviewed studies. So we'll go to the next one. We also know that there is a proven link to sexual violence. Why do you think that pornography is linked to sexual violence? Well, let me tell you what it does. Want to be a volunteer? Okay. All right, come here. I want you to get really mad, and I want you to kick that chair. Oh, yeah, you kicked the chair. All right, now I want you to get really mad and kick Audrey. Yeah, what's wrong with that?
Okay.
No. But you had a pause about kicking Audrey, right? Why?
It's girls.
It's a girl. What about your friend? Would you want to kick him?
I don't know.
What about this lady? Would you want to kick her?
No.
No. Why?
Because it's older person.
It's a person. But you didn't have any problem kicking
Nobody's in it.
an object, right? Good. You can have a seat. Pornography objectifies people. It makes people into objects. How do we know that? Because they looked, nerdy people, got people into an MRI machine and looked at what happens in the brain when they watch pornography, and they would show them a picture of a chair or an object, and one center would light up, and then they would show them a picture of people, and a whole nother center of their brain would light up, and then they would show them images of pornography, people in pornography, and the same center that registered as objects lit up. I think that's fascinating. Isn't that interesting? So it teaches your brain to no longer see, and especially young men, it teaches you not to see women as people, but to see them as objects that you can do with what you want, which is very, detrimental to how we've engaged with society. So it fuels things like human trafficking. When you view pornography, you should tell yourself, I am supporting human trafficking. Wow, that's a big statement, but it's true because it objectifies women. We know that people are trafficked into these rings because they're very good money makers making pornography and things for people to view and consume online. And it also gives us permission-giving beliefs. We see people treat other people poorly, and we think, well, that's not so bad. I can treat a woman like a chair. I can kick her. And we know that's not right. But over time, if that's your diet over and over and over, it feels like it's okay. And it teaches us to see people, especially women, as objects and not people. And if you think that these studies are wrong, and there's been a few studies that say, oh, no, there's no link between violence and pornography. But there are over 50 studies that show that there is a real link. So if you want to try to think that those 50 studies could all have been wrong, this is the number. We know that the odds that sexual violence and pornography are not connected. What would the odds of that be? All of those studies, all 50 of them would have to be wrong. The collective odds that these 50 studies are wrong is 1 in 88 decillion, 817 nonillion, 841 octillion, 970 septillion, 112 sextillion, 523 quintillion, 233 quadrillion, 890 trillion, 533 billion, 447 million, 265,625. I think they're right. What about you? But if you still don't believe that, think about this whole place tonight. What if we filled it to the brim with pennies? Pennies everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. Well, then imagine a whole Empire State Building filled with pennies. And then imagine 1 billion Empire State Buildings filled with pennies. And then imagine that you walked into that Empire State Building and you happened to pick just the right one. And you happened to go in the elevator and pick just the right floor. And then when you got out of the elevator, you picked just the right penny. That's what would have to happen for those studies that say pornography is linked to sexual violence to be wrong. When you play around with pornography, when you start being curious about it, it links you to the possibility that you will no longer see people as people, but you will begin to see them as objects to which that you can abuse. And sexual assault is a natural something that follows. So let's go to the next one. I'm in a hurry. We have to know the why. And I think this goes with any addiction. Why do people use drugs? I don't know that I ever met anybody in my time that said, in my last year and a half that I've really worked every day in and day out with people suffering from substance use disorder, I've never met one who said, you know, when I was a kid, I wanted to grow up and be a drug addict. I wanted to grow up and be a pornography addict. It doesn't happen that way. There are motives for using. And you can look at the motives. Maybe it's past trauma, PTSD, stress reduction, insecure attachment style. They didn't have somebody sitting on the floor teaching them those habits, getting other neural pathways established. And so we can go to the next one. But don't think of pornography or drug addiction or any addiction for that matter as just merely something, a bad behavior that you can just fix overnight. Usually there is a why leading up to that that makes this a more systemic problem, a bigger problem than just something we can pick up and fix just in a flash. So what are some of the triggers? We know that addiction is very isolating. We know that people use drugs, they use alcohol. We saw it during COVID. People picked up alcohol because liquor stores were open when churches were closed, right? And liquor stores were open when they shut down all of the support group meetings for addicts. But liquor stores stayed open. I think as a country, and I'm going to make a political statement, I'm sorry, but I think that's really wrong that we would do that. I think that's really, really wrong. And so we took people that we knew needed to be around people and people who needed fellowship, and we said, you're locked in your homes. And these are some common triggers. If you think of the words halt, are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Are you tired? And these lead back to our core emotions that will fuel addiction if we don't learn. And I think it's fabulous that we have a God and we have the Holy Ghost who comes, and he is our comfort when we are spiritually hungry and we feel like we need fed, right? And we have a pastor who pours into our life. But when we starve ourselves from the word, we starve ourselves from spiritual disciplines, we become hungry as a people. And that is a trigger time for picking up an addiction. Angry, that can be another one. If we have unresolved anger, things that we haven't dealt with, grief can lead to anger. Lots of different things that can lead to triggers for addiction. Being lonely, this is a big one. We know that connection is the opposite of addiction. Connection, because addiction isolates us. It wants you to be holed up in your bedroom, mean and angry, and I don't want to talk to anybody, and I need to be alone, and it's a lot of very self-driven. It's a very selfish condition to be in addiction. And also when we're just tired, when life becomes too much, when there's so much on us, that can be a time when we need to watch our behaviors because they can lead to addictions. So if you remember anything, guys, if you're struggling with certain behaviors that you know maybe aren't right, ask yourself, am I hungry? And it doesn't have to be, it can be physical hunger. Sometimes we just need a good, is anybody ever get hangry? I get hangry, right? Hungry and angry at the same time. Hungry and mad about it. But I think sometimes if we can just ask ourselves, I'm hungry. Do I need food? Is this really a food situation? Or do I need to pray? Do I need some time with God? Do I need to get in church? Do I need fellowship? Because maybe I'm angry about something. Maybe I need to talk to my pastor. Maybe I need to talk to my youth pastor. Because I really got upset when she said that to me. And I've never told anybody about it. And those feelings pent up, and they become the why behind our addiction. And then finally, loneliness. We know loneliness is a driver, right? We need connection. And what we do when we wouldn't dream, if that baby was crying, somebody wouldn't dream of running up and throwing her an iPad, right? Not in this room. But so many times we do that to ourselves. And I know I'm lonely. I know I need to connect with someone, but maybe I'll pick up my phone and see if Facebook will give me that feeling. Maybe I can connect with somebody. And we refuse to pick up the phone. They say the phone is sometimes the heaviest object in the room because nobody wants to pick it up and connect and just say, I'm lonely. I'm really tired. I've been going through some things at work. I've got some anger. I've never told anybody, but somebody really got me upset, and I've never dealt with that. So watch, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, halt. Before you engage in a behavior that you think might disappoint yourself or the Lord, ask yourself, am I hungry, angry, tired, lonely? Okay, go to the next one. I said that out of order. Forgive me. All right, so I think we need to understand the mind. We need to guard the heart. We'll skip to the next one. And these are just some scriptures. For I know that our weapons of warfare are not carnal, but they're mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, lest Satan should get an advantage of us, for we don't want to be ignorant of his devices. We want to learn, how does this stuff work? How does my brain work? How are marketers and people out there who sit in rooms who know our reward center and know all of that stuff, how are they trying to get me into a behavior that maybe shouldn't be? Finally, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are pure, think on these things. Wherefore, gird up the loins of your mind. That means just take control of your mind and hope to the end for grace that is to be brought unto you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. And I love 2 Corinthians 10, 4 and 5, or I think this just has 5 on there. But it says, bringing every thought to the obedience of Christ. When we do have thoughts, or we do have temptations, or we do lean into behaviors that we're not proud of, we have the ability to stop those thoughts. I've heard it described like this before. A pigeon can land on your head, right? And you couldn't really stop that. A pigeon could come, land on your head. But you could stop the pigeon from building a nest on your head, right? So we've got to do some things sometimes when those thoughts come against us, when those temptations come against us, so that they don't fuel our behaviors. Okay, we'll go to the next one. Jeremiah, this goes verses about the heart. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Keep thy heart with all diligence. That means this is going to take some work. We're going to have to put some effort into this. It's not just going to happen on our own. And every way of a man is right in his own eyes. See, we might not be able to see it. And that's why you have a pastor. That's why you have a youth pastor that says, you might think this behavior is okay, but really it can lead you someplace that's not okay. So let's get some things under control. Let's put some, they might not be red flags, but let's stop at some pink flags so that we can control our behavior before it gets out of control. All right, and we'll go into the next one. So these are some myths for parents. As soon as you say, my child would never, here they come nevering like never before. I love that. I love that one. My kids have nevered a few times. So I think these are just some myths. Myths that about pornography, that this is just a man problem, that women don't deal with pornography issues. And you can take everything I've said tonight, with very few exceptions, and put in video games, and we could have the same exact discussion, okay? So it can lead to down some of the similar paths. So this is not a guy problem. I recently dealt with a couple. He had a severe a church couple, as a matter of fact, not here, not anywhere you would know. I deal with people all over the country. But he had a severe video game addiction. Couldn't get to work, couldn't keep a job because he was highly, highly addicted to video games. That's where he got his pleasure center met. He didn't need connection because that's where his brain shut off and he could connect, was through video games. She, being lonely, being tired, being in a marriage that was not, based on a godly foundation, developed a severe internet pornography problem. And so this is not just a male-female problem. It's everybody's problem. I think another myth is this doesn't happen in the church. I think that we talked about that earlier. We heard them say that earlier. This can't happen to our family. I've put up the best safeguards. I've got the best free security wall. There's no way this could happen in my family. I dealt with a family whose child wasn't even 10 years old yet, but she had a severe pornography addiction. Parents had no idea. Good church family. She had been exposed at a friend's house, and there was some other abuses involved, and started stealing her father's phone at night. The father's phone did not have safeguards, and she was into several hours of pornography a night before, and she needed extensive therapy. So this is not just a guy problem. It is a church problem. This is, if you listen to the Sexual Assault Victims Coalition, they're calling this a public health crisis, the crisis of sexual violence in pornography that comes from pornography. And then the other myth is that your kids don't have access to pornography. I'm sorry, families. You can lock them in the basement for as long as you possibly can, but someday they're going to have to come out and they will have access. It's not enough to just say, and I thank you, we need all the safeguards that we can get. And I know that you're going to be talking that in future weeks, and that is so important. But we can't just say, it didn't happen here. Because I think you guys have some of the smartest kids in the world. I think I have some of the smartest kids in the world. And if they want to access pornography, they can, and they will. So we've got to do better at teaching them the heart battle so that before they get to the mind battle, they've got some conviction and some teaching and some tools so that they won't pick up the head battle because they've already won that battle in their heart. But if you're a kid here today and you have not accessed pornography, it's because they chose not to. And I think they deserve a round of applause because it is everywhere. Drugs are accessible. We live in a world where they do have access. We cannot pretend like they don't. They will at some point have access. We have to give them the tools, and whether that's I hope it's not as in their early tweens, but even if they get to adulthood, they will have access. We've got to fight the bigger battle, am I right? About the battle of the heart. So we'll go to the next one. So what can we do? First of all, we have to talk about it. This was not the subject I would have loved to get up here and talk to you about, although I think it's super important. It's uncomfortable. My son couldn't be here tonight. He got the 2-on-1 version last night when we were preparing. So but we have to talk about it, and it's uncomfortable, and that is okay. It is completely okay. Don't assume your kids haven't been exposed. When you start those conversations, if this is the first time you've had those conversations, don't assume that if you say, first of all, I wouldn't start out with, have you been exposed? Because that's going to be a little bit, why? They're not going to answer you. They're just going to not talk to you. I can promise you that. We got to ask real open-ended questions. You got to say, hey, what was the last thing you saw that made you really, really uncomfortable when you were playing your video game? What's the last book you read that you didn't feel good about? Those are the types of questions that you ask. And then you say, have there ever been a time where something popped up on your computer that you didn't know was there? And it gives them a chance to answer, and then you can find out the details. So parents or kids, I'm giving you the heads up of how they're going to ask. And it's okay for you to say yes. It's okay to say, yeah. And I was scared, and I had no clue what to do, and I slammed the computer down. Or it's okay to say, yeah, I clicked on it because I didn't know what it was. And all of a sudden, I was really scared, and I thought you would be mad. It's okay to have those discussions. We have to have those discussions. And if you need to have them with Pastor Eichert, Pastor Airwood, your youth pastor, find someone that you can have these discussions with. Next, have an exposure plan. What's your kid's plan? Do you know today if something pops on your kid's phone or on their computer, do they know what they're supposed to do? Do you have an exposure plan? I think that's really important. What's the plan? Are they just going to close out of it and you're going to have no idea what it was? Are they going to close the computer and bring it right to you? How are they going to handle when? I hope it never happens. I hope you're one of the lucky parents that it doesn't happen, and they're going to teach you how to lessen the risk, but there's still a risk. So we got to come up with an exposure plan. Look for changes in behavior, temperament, habits. Are they sleeping more than they ever slept before? Are they feeling really sad? They used to make jokes, and they told not knock jokes to the table, and all of a sudden now something's off. Not saying that's always pornography, but it's an issue that we should explore as parents. What's going on? Spend more time. Get in, have open-ended questions, and avoid why questions. That's a good one. Why did you do that? That makes people really defensive. If I say, why did you come here and why did you sit on the front row? Are you going to feel a little awkward? But if I say, it's going to see you on the front row, you always choose the seat. Tell me why you choose this front seat. Yeah, you get an answer, right? So she likes sitting close to the front. Probably her friends sit close to the front. So you get more answers. You catch more flies with honey, parents. Come on, have big, long conversations. And you'll be shocked. Some people think, my kid won't ever talk to me about that. Yes, he will. I promise you he will. I promise you she will. You just got to get them in the right environment. You've got to have time, and you got to be prepared to be shocked of what they know, or you got to be prepared to educate about what they don't or what they need to know. So set safeguards, this is what they're going to teach us how to do, to set up all the safeguards, and then pretend you didn't set up safeguards. One of the exposures that can often happen is at a house where there are no children, maybe a grandparent's house, and they think, well, I don't need safeguards on my computer. Nobody's ever here. But when the grandkids come, they know which computers have maybe an old computer laying around the house that you didn't safeguard. So those are some areas I'm sure you're going to touch on later. And then develop mentors for your kids. Have a pastor, have a youth pastor. My dad was always my pastor. He set up, and so did Rob's parents. His parents were always ministers, but they set people in our lives who served as other pastors. So if it was something I needed to talk to a pastor about, I could call. Brother Nix was one of my pastors. Brother Dowdy was Rob's pastor. So setting up people in your lives, maybe friend groups, parenting, parenting partners that you work with. And if there's I know when my kids vomited, I don't do vomit, right? I can't clean that up. That was Rob's job. I took care of the other side of things. But, there's maybe certain topics that you're not comfortable with dealing with. So get you some parenting partners that you trust. Talk to your pastor, talk to your youth pastor, and get some safeguards in there. All right, are we done yet? Was that my last slide? Woohoo! I think it was. Look, 8 o'clock. I'm all done. Will somebody have prayer and we can finish out? Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Sister Redenbush. That was awesome. To kind of close out, I wanted to read 1 Peter 5 and 8. I don't know if we can get that, Brother Matthew. But it says to be sober and to be vigilant. Does anyone know what the word vigilant means? What? Put up a fight? Okay. I like that. That's good. But the Google definition was to keeping careful watch for possible danger, right? And so be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. So the idea of pornography or any of the things that you were talking about tonight, right? Addiction with alcohol and gambling, right? It all relates back to the adversary seeking who he may devour, right? And for kids, maybe, alcohol isn't a problem, or, whatever the drug of your choice might be a problem, but something that you can access on your phone in your house, right? The other day I was watching a simple YouTube video. I think it was a DIY video, and the first comment was a link to a pornography site. And so it's everywhere. It's seeking to get you, right? These companies are spending millions of dollars on, nerdy people to figure out what causes this reaction in the brain. And so they're trying to loop you in from a young age. And so as parents, I think it's pretty critical that the Bible is telling us we've got to keep a watch on our homes, right? It's our job. It's not our pastor's responsibility. This is happening in our house. And so we have to do everything we can. So this first part of the series is kind of equipping you to help you see, and prevent those from ever becoming a problem. And then next week, we're going to start talking about some of the things that we can do to start safeguarding our home, right? And that's just to lessen the chance, but you have to have these conversations with your kids. And if you're struggling, this isn't just for kids, right? That's kind of how we phrase it to get you here, right? We can't just start saying, we're talking to adults. But this is a real problem for adults, too. So if this is something you're struggling with, you need an accountability partner. You need to get a hold of your pastor. You need to have those conversations. So this isn't something that you can deal with on your own. The chances of that of working on your own is just, it's so small. So you need to talk about it with the right people. So, and I wonder if we can just stand and pray together and dismissal, and we hope to see you back here next week. So, Lord God, we ask that you touch us this week, God, that you would help us. God, these tools that we've been equipped with tonight, God, these signs and just the knowledge that you shared, that you'd impact our hearts this week, our brains, God, that they would absorb it, God, that you'd help us as we come into contact with people who are struggling with this addiction, God, and that you'd help us to safeguard our homes and to keep our children safe, Lord, and that you be with us this week, Lord. We love you and we praise you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.